First off, how do I save a change? Using the text editor of your choice, you can make changes to and create files to add to your assignments repository. Make sure that you are doing the right work in the right folder, i.e. Lab 1's work are being made to files within the Lab number 1 folder you have cloned from GitHub, as you can see here. Make sure your work is saved, and then once you're ready to save a change to GitHub, there's 3 steps: add, commit, and push. Before you prepare to tell Git about a change to a file you've made, you must first stage it, which means telling Git which files are to be uploaded as part of your snapshot. Let's work with an example. Here, I'm using echo to create a file named test.txt. Then I'll execute git add, followed by test.txt, which was the file I just created, to let Git know about this file. Now, we want to let Git know what changes we've made. So we execute the command git commit. So I'll write git commit, and then every single time you have to add a message that basically describes what you've done. And so here, I've added the file test.txt. Hit enter, and it will let you know it worked. Last but not least, we have to push. Push is the last step, but also very important. This is what sends your code to GitHub and is necessary for your changes and work done to an assignment to be reflected in what's being graded. It's as easy as executing git push. You'll be prompted for your username and password for GitHub. Git will let you know when it's done. It's also good practice to then go to the GitHub Classroom website and checking your lab's folder to see if the changes you made were successfully pushed. Going to my repository, I can see here that test.txt was successfully saved with the commit comment that I made. Then you know you're good to go. How do I check the status of my repository? Executing the command git status from within your assignments directory lets you know the status of each file in comparison with the current snapshot on GitHub. Let's call it. We can see that everything is up to date with GitHub. It could also show you if a file's been modified on your local machine from the latest version on GitHub, if you've staged a file to be committed, or if there's a version newer than the copy on your machine on GitHub, for example when you're collaborating with multiple people. When doing the 3 steps of add, commit, push, I like to call git status between each step to make sure that I staged the right files before pushing to the repository. For example, let's create a new file using echo, named test2.txt. Then I'll add it and call git status. We can see that there's a new file, test2.txt, on my machine that needs to be committed still. So I'll call git commit with the message added test2.txt, and then do git push. Then, after all is said and done, I can call git status again to let me know that I'm up to date with GitHub, or I can go check out my GitHub Classroom repository again, be sure to refresh, and we'll see test2.txt with my commit comment there. Awesome. Let's go through another example where using git status could come in handy. You'll notice I've cloned my labs repository onto my local machine as well. So let's make a change on this machine and then see what it would look like back on the lab machine. So let's use echo to create a new file. Let's call it test3.txt. And then we'll add it to Git just like we would have on the lab machine using the 3-step add, commit, push. We can see using git status that it was successful, so now let's return to the lab machine. Now we're back on the lab machine, and calling ls shows us that test3.txt isn't here, so we're going to need to get Git to check for that. We'll execute git fetch so that it gets in touch with the servers to see if there's any changes that have been made. You'll be prompted for your username and password like normal. Then, once that's done, you can call git status once again, and it will show us that we're behind the master branch by one commit. So we'll need to use git pull to download the new changes. It will ask you for your username and password once again. After all is said and done, we can use ls to check and see that test3.txt showed up on our machine. We can also call git status again to see if we're up to date. Using these tools, you can use this to collaborate with partners on assignments or even transfer data from your local machine to the lab machines and vice versa. Let's recap. How do I make a change using add, commit, and push? Before you prepare to tell Git about a change to a file you've made or created, you must first stage it, and that's what git add does. Then you want to let Git know what changes you've made to said file. So we execute git command followed by the message that describes just that. Lastly, you do git push, which saves your work to the GitHub servers. How do I work from two computers, like my local machine and the lab machine? As mentioned, there could be changes made on the GitHub version of your project that may be out of sync with the version on your machine that you're going to want to fix before making further changes. Calling git fetch and then git status shows you if changes have been made. If so, you can see exactly which files have been modified and then execute git pull, which will download to your machine the new changes made. Then you can do your work, do the 3-step add commit push, and then on the other machine, you'd have to pull the new changes again. This is what keeps everything up to date everywhere. How do I work with my assignment partner? Keep in touch with your assignment partner. That way, you know who is working on what and when, and then you can use git fetch and git status in tandem to make sure you're always working on an up-to-date version of your project. Avoid working on the same file at the same time, otherwise this can create conflicts in the code one another writes. You can use commit messages to make clear what changes are made with each push. It may also be easier to push smaller changes each time with concise commit messages, rather than massive changes to your code all at once.